Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Network Chuck. Today we're talking about Cisco certifications. Are they still worth it? Now, I'm saying this kind of on the... I'm debating somebody today. I'll introduce him in a second, but I'm kind of on the... I think they may be getting to that point where they're maybe not as valuable as they used to be. Now, I want them to be valuable. I'm hoping I'm wrong. In fact, I'm coming at this like, please... prove me wrong, because I love Cisco certifications, but as I look at things, as I look at the new recent exam changes, I'm like, man, I don't know. And you know, for my last stream, I said if I started over in IT, what path would I choose? And I kind of detailed that out for you, and it was very Cisco light. I even said CCNA was optional, so where does that leave me? Where does that leave the industry? And you know what? I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. So let's talk about this. So I've got on the channel today Mr. Packet Thrower. Mr. Packet Thrower, say hello.
Oh, long time no chat.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think we talked, gosh, back in
January?
December. Yeah, January or something like that. But if you guys don't know who the Packet Thrower is, he has every certification. So if you name one, he probably has it. Any vendor, not kidding. And he helped Todd Lamley write his CCNA book. He does video courses, and you moderate the CCNA Reddit. Am I correct in that?
Yep, and also the Discord.
And the Discord. So yeah, he's all Cisco all the time, but he's also everything else all the time. So he's a perfect person to talk to about this. So Don, I'm going to throw this out to you real quick. His name's Don, by the way, if I throw you off with that. The new CCNA. We'll start with that. Now, real quick, guys, I just want to tell you this. If you're studying for your CCNA, CCNP, or whatever, keep going. Like, whatever we say here, what you're doing is still valuable, and we'll talk about, we'll uncover that stuff, but I just want you to start you off right now. Don't be discouraged. What you're doing is the right thing, a good thing. It still holds value, but we're going to kind of dive deep into maybe what the future holds for certifications. So, Don, Mr. Packet Thrower, I don't like the new CCNA, but I know you like it. I'll kind of give you my gripes for it. I think it's too wide. I think it's basically the Network Plus now, and I think it was boring. I almost fell asleep during the exam. And there's no more simulations. Like, it's not even fun anymore. So while I think from a pure marketing perspective, looks like I have a comment on the screen here. I have my wife moderating, so just threw it up there. I'll answer that here in a moment. From a pure marketing perspective, I think CCNA still holds value. But from a content perspective, I'm like, gosh, I don't know about that. I'll go ahead and answer that super chat we have on here. It's from Alex Straz. Since taking CCNA CCNP, they took out proof of work by removing SIMs. Thoughts on this? Perfect super chat, because it's exactly what I'm talking about. So, Don, what do you think about the CCNA?
All right, well, first of all, have you seen how wide the Network Plus is these days? Like, they have everything from storage, networking, to MDM, to cloud, to... so that is the definition of an inch deep, mile wide kind of test. Now, as far as simulations go, I mean, I know like Jeremy and whatnot quite like the simulations, but they were always flawed because the way the simulations were built, you had to they had to fake a interface using like Adobe Flash, for lack of better words.
Oh yeah, it wasn't perfect. I'll give you that, but at least it was something.
It was something, but it was. Here's my problem with it. It was something, but it was always a very simple answer at the end of the day because they couldn't do anything more complex, and they were worth a lot of points there. So if you were doing bad on the test and you passed a couple sims, you just might pass the CCNA, but you're not really that great of a CCNA at the end of the day. The new one, it is more interested in targeting operational differences there, as in, hey, we just brought up this routing protocol. How's this routing table going to change? And yeah, it might not say what command you need to type for this, but it makes sure you understand that, hey, this is what's going to happen, and this is the change that's going to happen based on this change. So it's a lot more real world, a lot more practical, and because all the points are basically the same there, you can't get by on a few easy questions.
I'll give you that. Like, there were at times where simulations could be kind of easy. Like, you could logic your way through it, even if you didn't study very hard. But again, I think they took away the joy that you would normally feel when they took away the SIMs. And this isn't just CCNA. I mean, we're talking like the NP level stuff too. I loved this is the CCNP route, switch, and troubleshoot. Like those were fun exams because the simulations were, I think, pretty good. But they're gone now.
When they,
And
I mean, there's always people complaining on rightly or wrongly that their simulation bugged out and Cisco's the worst for it. And so I haven't personally had any sim issues, but to be fair, I mean, I personally thought they were going to go a different direction. I thought they were going to integrate CML or Viral 2 into it, and they still might down the road. But I always tell people on the CCNA Reddits, you got to be careful what you wish for, right? Because it's fun to say, you know, it'd be great if I had a real router to configure, but if Cisco has a reliable router you can configure, they can get really evil on their simulations there and just say, hey, basically fully configure this branch, and that's half your test there. So there's always a mix between theory and practicality in these exams. Like you can't just do a CCIE lab and scale it down to CCNA and say, okay, you're a junior now.
yeah, I get that. And there's practicality. Like CCNA is one of the most popular IT certifications. So to do something like the CCIE at a scale that large would be impossible. Yet, you and I have both taken Azure certifications, and those things, I mean, I think we both agree are pretty fun because they are very real world. You're actually doing stuff in their portal.
Yeah, well, I think I told you about my experience last time there, but yeah, it was certainly an interesting 6 hours.
And I think IT certification exams should excel. Like they should change and advance in technology. And I feel like Cisco took a couple steps back. And I'm like, well, guys, you're basically a software company. I mean, they are now. They write software. That's their main thing. Why not write a great certification exam? They're charging us a lot of money.
Well, they
for
have.
it. Well, no, they're going to make us write the exam questions. That's how you get credit to renew your certification.
Well, that's AB method. I mean, that's them throwing you a bone rather than saying you have to write the test there. I mean, you can also do courses and you can also make content like I do or whatnot. But you gotta. I mean, if you look at the CCNA, like for every person who says that, oh, I hate the CCNA, there's another person who says, oh, I hated the CCNA RNS because who cares about routing and switching and stuff? Who cares about EIGRP? So basically what they did is they ripped it down to the essence because they don't want it to be a RNS exam. They want it to be a common exam. Added wireless and added a controller for SDN. And when you're teaching SDN, you need something practical, so DNA Center makes sense. And they introduced automation. So in terms of a junior cert, I mean, you can run a basic router, you can run a basic switch, you can add a wireless network, and you won't be confused if you have DNA Center on the job. So it's pretty good foot in the door. Is it going to be everything? No, but it's also not going to be 400 question test.
Right. So I mean, I'll give you that. So in your opinion, do you think the CCNA content-wise is just as strong as the previous CCNA?
Yep. And the biggest reason why is not so much the content, it's the number of questions they ask. So before, they asked you about 50 questions per test, and there would always be these topics that are like, say, IP version 6, where you might not actually get an IP version 6 question on the test there. And
yeah.
And it was to the point there where during the way Cisco bounces things around, if enough people are saying, oh, I didn't have IP version 6, you could probably just skip that section of the test. And I mean, you're taking a gamble, but you'd be fine there. Now with 100 questions or more, they test every single topic on the exam. So now you can't say, I'm just going to not bother reading the infrastructure maintenance section because I know I'm going to pass. If you do that, you're probably going to fail because they will touch on every little thing there.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. So I think it's harder to brain dump these exams now because there are so many sticking questions, and we don't even know how often they're going to rotate those suckers in. So it's a lot harder to brain dump it now, which I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm told they're updating it quite rapidly. I have no real way of knowing, but I'll take the word on it. Especially if people are getting credit for writing questions.
Yeah, that's true, man. And that's the other part I want to talk about too is, Cisco. We got a super chat on the or a chat on the screen here. Passed the Network Plus already, studying for CCNA now. Aside from the HR cred of the cert, is there any other reason to get it? I guess we can answer that real quick before I go into my next thing. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Net Plus is, I'm trying to be polite, but worthless. um, it is the best place use case for Net Plus is if you're a non-technical role like a manager or project manager, and you just want to understand what that OSPF thing is. Net Plus is fine, but when you compare the Net Plus to the CCNA, there's no practicality. It drags you in a million directions there, where you just read about something for a sentence, and that's you learned a topic, and there's no real value in it. And I say this in pretty much every time I do these kind of things. There is no HR filter. It's not what people generally think it is. It's your resume sorted by some kind of HR solution, and then the team typically picks who they're interviewing there. You're not trying to trick the HR cat lady.
Well, I would say that's probably true a lot of the time. Like, you work for a larger company that you guys probably get some resumes. I mean, resumes all the time. You probably outsource your HR stuff a lot, and they sort things for you. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I checked the job posting the other day on our company, and we have something like 60 postings. So, we're continuously hiring, and there's always that kind of thing there. And I've worked in a lot of different clients, and I typically help clients with hiring due to being a trusted advisor kind of thing. And I've seen how it works in a lot of different industries and whatnot there. And it doesn't really make sense where the HR lady doesn't know how to use her computer, says, okay, I'm going to help find a DevOps engineer.
Right. Okay. So to answer Zachary's question, he has the Net Plus, which means he has some networking knowledge. He learned some subnetting. He learned what that OSPF thing was.
The most valuable thing about Net Plus, sorry to cut you off, is you get subnetting out of the way, and subnetting is traditionally the hardest for a junior to learn.
Right.
And once you get that, you're going to have a lot easier time jumping into the other topics.
Now, so to answer his question, I mean, obviously, if he wants to go down the network engineer path, CCNA is clear winner. But if maybe he's going for cloud stuff, maybe if he's going in another direction that's maybe not networking specific, would the CCNA be a good next step? Or
CCNA is recognized for pretty much every IT industry for a junior level. Cloud, ton of networking. Systems, they at least usually recognize the value of it. Various other roles. You can't really go wrong with a CCNA. It can even get you like a tech support job in place of an A+ or anything like that there, because typically those kind of jobs just want you to see that you have any kind of cert, not that the A+ itself or the CompTIA trifecta are valuable. It's just that they want you to see you have something. That's typically the first thing you do.
Okay, gotcha. So you would say, yeah, get the CCNA even if you already have Network Plus, because you want to have that cred, basically.
Yeah. A network role will almost certainly not hire just a Network Plus person, because what a Network Plus says, and I say this a lot, is I understand what OSPF is, but I don't have a clue how to use it.
Okay. So I'm actually taking the Network Plus here soon because I haven't taken it in a while, and I'm gonna do like a video kind of talking about comparing it. So this does help me a little bit. But yeah, that's interesting. So Zachary, I hope we answered your question there. So I'll dive right into what I think is probably the thing I hate the most about the new certification route. Is that the certifications are so wide and varied now. And I think we talked about this before, but I mean, you can get your CCMP Enterprise, cool. But then you have to ask, what kind of CCMP Enterprise are you? Are you wireless? Are you automation? I mean, you can be anything and not have any of the other information or knowledge. It's confusing. And I think the strongest point of certifications is that they can be marketed great for you. Like they can put your resume at the top of a list if you have a great certification, but now it's kind of confusing. And just before the stream, I did a search, like, are people actually looking for CCNP Enterprise right now? And then how do they list those job searches? And I found like a few, and I was searching like across, I didn't put location in, just any location. And I think the way they put it now is Where did I see it? CCNP Enterprise with one network wireless concentration, or CWMP, or whatever. This is a wireless job. So they're starting to be able to search for these things, but I think it's just muddy and confusing. Do you think the new certification tracks are making it confusing for people?
Well, you have to look at what a CCMP traditionally is, right? Like CCMP is not a junior cert. It's you're supposed to work in the field that you're interested in your CCMP in for at least a year, getting good hands on, and then you're going to start working on it. Like you're supposed to take a couple years before you actually become a CCMP in the proper way of doing things beforehand. And if you look at like say CCP security, well, you had to learn firepower, you had to learn ICE, you had to learn ESA, WSA, you had to VPNs, you had to learn a bunch of stuff there, and it's arguably a lot harder. I mean, it's fine for me because I work on all that stuff there, but if you're just a firewall guy who just wants to make VPNs and you're the best VPN person ever, maybe you don't want to deal with learning what Cisco ESA is for email security. So it gives you a lot more flexibility, and it also gives you one exam per or one cert per exam. So anytime you write a Cisco exam now, you get a credential, as opposed to I have to write 4 exams to get my CCNP data center, and I could take a year doing that, and during that time, I can't put CCP data center elegantly in my resume, but you can say, hey, I passed the ACI test, and there you go. So it gives you a bit more flexibility that way. And I'd argue it's a trade-off. I mean, you're not going to have on the surface as much of a superstar. Like, like, hey, this guy knows everything Cisco security. He's a CCNP security, but you will have an easier point of entry there because it's more feasible for a more specialist kind of person to focus in, and you can always dabble what you want there. It's kind of like what Microsoft did with the platform certification, the MCSE platform. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
So basically the idea is you have your base, and then you just once a year you can add to that base. With Cisco there, if you're a partner, you probably want to do more specialist kind of stuff, but otherwise you just pick what you want and go from there. As for job postings, I mean, job postings are always slow to react. Like Microsoft tried to change MCSE to MSDST back in the day, and after a year or so, they got frustrated and put it back to MCSE because all the recruiters just kept asking for MCSE and everyone got confused. So, recruiters are like I said before, that there is no HR filter, but there is a recruiter filter. And the recruiters are typically not the, how do I say this without being insulting? Not the smartest people in the world. And
well, they're not as technical as we are. Let's be nicer with it.
okay, that was nicer, but okay. They are less adaptive to change. How's that? And so there's an issue with that kind of thing. But what I would say is CCNP is, I think it's a better spot. Now, that doesn't mean that Cisco's going to keep this system. They might, in a year or two, say, okay, well, that was fun. Let's either make a new track like CCIP or something, and that's going to be the guy with like 3 specialist certs, kind of like the Aruba Edge cert. And then, or maybe let's keep it the way it is. But it's an experiment. I mean, all the vendors are experimenting. Like Microsoft just restructured all their certs. Cisco just restructured their certs. Pretty much everyone is trying different ways of shaking it up.
Yeah, so I think that kind of bleeds into like my next problem with this is that every certification is almost like pretty good now. Like we were just talking before about one vendor. We'll get into that here in a moment, but I feel like Cisco maybe isn't the top of the game anymore on cert content and cert depth. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Like right now, shops don't only have Cisco anymore. If you're in IT, I mean, we used to have just we're a Cisco shop. We got Cisco stuff. Now it's so wide and varied, and now network engineers are not just doing Cisco stuff. They're doing maybe Aruba, Fortinet, Palo Alto. Maybe they're doing cloud stuff, AWS, Azure. So their skills are so wide and varied. So I don't know. I feel like going down the specific Cisco path is almost losing a little bit of value because there's so many areas we have to look at now. I think there'd be more value in getting Linux certifications, more value in getting Python stuff. And I don't even get me started on the DevNet Associate stuff. Like, I think there's more value in doing that. I don't know. What do you think on that?
Well, I think the foundation that CCNA provides is, or the Cisco certs, is precisely why it's most valuable. Because if you look at, say, okay, well, I want to do networking with, and we'll talk about them in a minute, with Aruba, and we want to do firewalls with Palo Alto, and we want to do automation with Puppet, and you do all this piecemeal stuff there. You're going to have a really fractured foundation, because every vendor does their own thing, and they have their own limitations and whatnot. Cisco at least gives you the end-to-end story for most of the solutions. And two, it's you're going to have a really hard time learning, say, Palo Alto cert, because for the most part, you can go buy my CCNA book, or Todd and I's book, or you can buy
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug, yep. And you're pretty good there, but there is no Palo Alto book. The HP books are made by HP Press, and you typically have to buy them directly from HP. Like Checkpoint, there's basically have to go for training. Like all these different random vendors, they don't have like the let's buy a bookstore or install Packet Tracer, because there is no Packet Tracer for non-Cisco products. Cisco is the only one that's broad enough to make it easy to learn that there. So I would say that once you get past the CCNA there, you start getting into, one, a danger, because the more certs you do, the more you have to back up in the interview, and that's really hard if you don't have experience to back that up. So if you do like your Palo Alto Junior, and you do your I don't know, Aruba, and you do your whatever other certification, you're gonna have to and then I sit you down and say, okay, well, how do you do this in Palo Alto? You can't really go, oh well, I did that a year ago there, I don't remember that anymore. So it's a lot harder to keep straight there, not only for learning, but also for labbing, because like Palo Alto, they don't offer like a trial for their virtual firewall. You have to buy a license, or you have to do an Azure instance or something. So it's a lot less flexible there, whereas like Cisco has like CML or whatnot there, where you can learn not everything, but you can learn a fair amount of what they have, and you can build off it. So, I mean, if you can learn networking really well from Cisco, you can walk to whatever vendor you want that's similar, like Juniper, and you won't have a hard time learning Juniper if you're a really solid CCNA. But
and I'll agree with you there. Like, that's true. Like, Cisco did set the standard for a long time on network certifications. So like pretty much everyone copied them for the most part. And if you get your CCNA, you're right. You can switch to Juniper. You can switch to whatever. Maybe Huawei. I don't know if Huawei's similar. Never used Huawei. Have you used Huawei before? Just curious.
I have.
I'm not surprised.
Actually, kind of funny story there. When I was a mobility engineer for, I rolled out 3G for Alberta, and 3G the cellular, and they basically shipped a team directly from China there to work on this project, and they would phone me at 3 a.m. every day, and anyway, it's a tragic experience. But Huawei, I don't have a lot to say or nice to say about Huawei, but I do appreciate their free backup to China feature.
I imagine that would be one of their first features they implement. So I want to just touch base real quick with everyone watching. CCNA, I agree with Don on this. That I almost cut you, Rob. Mr. Packet Thrower, I agree that the CCNA is a crazy valuable certification because it's been valuable for a very long time. My dog in this fight that I'm bringing to this debate is that I think what's happened to its most recent revision made the exam less fun, and I think, in my opinion, I think it's a bit more too wide. I miss the routing and switching. I miss that it was that specific. I miss that they had specific roles at the associate level. I feel like going straight to CCNP level, I don't know. I feel like it devalued the CCNP and also removed a lot of opportunity for people to get that basic understanding at that associate level. But to encourage you guys going for your CCNA, it's still crazy valuable. You put your CCNA in your resume, you're going to be extremely, extremely valuable. I got links below to get you started on that, by the way. And also, I'll throw Mr. Packet Thrower's book in the description when we finish this call. So I know you wrote that with Mr. Todd Lamley. Now,
So if you want to talk about the tracks for a minute, the CCNA tracks were very deeply misunderstood by a lot of people, and you could argue that they weren't implemented very well across the board. Like the tracks, aside from the RNS, were really meant to start after you're around CCNP level for RNS, and they because of that, there was a lot of real gaps, and people were confused. And then there was other issues there, like the CCNA security book was a bit of a disaster because they wrote it and then they dropped their IPS and went with firepower like the next day, and then they did a rapid update, but Pearson didn't want to push out an update, so that was a broken official study guide. And then there's other tracks there where they didn't even have books you could buy there because there was no service provider book, for example. The wireless was always out of date because the nature of wireless. So the tracks themselves, I mean, they were really meant to be I'm going to do this to start my CCNP journey, and but it was meant to be I'm starting 1 week CCNA and next week CCNP, not I have a CCNA security, give me a job.
Okay. Well, I mean, I kind of saw it as the Security Plus version for network engineers, which I loved. It was security with a network flair. It was that initial. It's I saw it as if I got my CCNA right, I didn't have to go and get my Security Plus to understand some security stuff. I can get CCNA security, and I already knew a lot of networking stuff, so it actually helped me to get that certification. I love that. Same for the wireless, same for the voice stuff, and then collaboration. And that's just my preference. I miss the associate level track.
But you can still do that with the specialist exams.
Well.
And wireless is in the CCNA, at least I remind you.
It is. Yeah, it's okay.
Ooh. So this is actually a good segue. So I have to write a bunch of Aruba certs for my business, and I'm doing the Aruba version of the CCNA tonight, actually, and pretty much right after this call. And basically, when I was reading the study book, I thought popped was Cisco just copied the Aruba CCNA for the update. It has almost exactly the same topics there. It has your VLANs, obviously. It has your SDP, obviously. It has your OSPF as the only routing protocol. It has wireless. And it has controllers, which except for its Airwave instead of DNA Center. So except for the automation piece, Cisco basically said, hey, Aruba's getting away with this, so we're going to do that too because we want wireless on our exam.
That's pretty funny. And it's usually it's people copying Cisco, but maybe I don't see the part where Cisco copies someone else. Maybe everyone's copying each other. I don't know. That is interesting though that Aruba was already out in front with that, and Cisco came in behind them and did the same thing. I think wasn't it Juniper that already had some pretty cool stuff with their DevOps certifications? They were already way ahead of Cisco with the DevNet Associate.
I think they beat Cisco by a few months, but we don't really know when these things were announced and these people talk to each other. So someone was probably having lunch with the Cisco guys working on the DevNet, so he's like, oh, I'll show you.
That's exactly how I see it. Now, speaking of automation, last week I kind of said that. No, I didn't kind of say it. I did say it. I think network automation will be a thing of the past for network engineers within the next 10 to 20 years. And what I mean by saying that is I think automation will be point and click. It'll be tools like DNA Center, which is already out and people use it now. It'll be tools like that that are click, I want to automate this, click, I want to automate this. It won't be us learning Python or scripting. It's just going to be, okay, I understand OSPF. This tool can automate that process. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, you're right that existing tools are going to get better, but there's always something that pops out along the road there. Like just because we have Super SDN 10 years from now, or whatever they're going to call it, that doesn't mean that there's not the frameworks for Mega SDN that we're going to have to learn Super Python or Robot Python or whatever they're going to call it to uh, do it there. Maybe it'll go really retro. We'll have to learn like COBOL again or something like a circular loop. But
No, I agree with you there. Though I know, like, especially in your job, because you work for a bunch of companies, and it's your job to be like putting in all these new things. Especially as someone who works with many companies, you can use automation to do mass deployments like you do and have great templates. But for most companies that have engineers on staff, they're not going to want them to start tinkering with Python and just suddenly putting scripts into their network that could possibly break because they're not programmers.
yeah, but people don't want that now. Like, uh, I mean, let's be clear here. If you're like a network junior and you just want to impress the boss there, don't do it by writing a Python script without permission. Like, you don't want the security team finding out, like, oh, you stored all the network passwords in this text file, did you? And oh, you had a typo and you accidentally took down 100 routers. Oh, that's hilarious. Like, you don't want to have those kind of conversations. But generally speaking, scripting will always be, if you have, like I actually did a lecture with Todd Amily's class 2 weeks ago where I went over automation topics for CCNA. And basically I point out like, hey, this is really cool. I pushed this configuration, but hey guys, I just wrote 60 lines to push 6 lines of configuration there. What do you think takes the most time here? Like, so you got to have your balance so that if you find yourself doing those 6 lines every single day, then maybe there's value in putting in an automation script kind of thing there. But you got to use your discretion. And likewise, if someone buys DNA Center or SolarWinds or whatever for NCM, you don't need to learn a Python script because guess what? Those tools have their own version of pushing configuration, and why go against the grain? But it's yeah, I mean, there's always going to be opportunities for improving your workflow, whatever that looks like. And there's always going to be emergent technologies there, like just when you think that, Ansible's really cool, and then they say, oh no, Nornir is the way to go, and then they go, Nornir, that's for children, and now it's this, and like, or Terraform is so great, and then like, yeah, but you can't do it in Python, so now we have this solution, and so I mean, the DevOps world is kind of, things pop up, they take hold, they implode, they build up again. Like it's going to take a while for mainstream there. I mean, like seems like every other day Cisco's releasing a new automation tool there. Like their new one is for what they call the Action Center, where they can orchestrate really big jobs across all different domains, and it's like. I don't see there. I mean, eventually, I mean, are we going to get to the point there where you need to log into a router and like, I mean, we already have routers today with no command line. Like they're all like Facebook uses RESTful API for everything.
Yeah, and like you got like things like Ubiquity. I mean, Ubiquity obviously is not Cisco caliber, but they could be, and it's all point and click. I've
Or
only logged
Meraki.
into Ubiquity one time.
Like, I mean, if Meraki decided that, hey, we're going to be, we want to be more of an enterprise replacement, I mean, they could spend development time and add more features and stuff. But obviously, Cisco doesn't want to cut off its nose to spite its face right now. But it's I don't know. I mean, there's always a give and pull, and like a lot of these ideas, like we tried them at one point in the past, and then we backed away from them. And just like cloud, everyone went to cloud, and then they got the bill, and they're like, maybe we don't want to be in the cloud anymore. Maybe we need to do cost reduction and have hyper clouds because apparently it costs $1 million a month there, and we didn't realize we were paying that when we had a data center. So I don't want to be responsible for that bill.
Well, let me ask you a quick question. So we're talking about Cisco certifications, and are they still valuable? And they obviously are, and they will be for a while. But you, as someone who has you have your hands in so many different areas in IT all the time, from cloud to storage to all kinds of stuff. If you started over in IT today, and I want to ask you the same question I asked myself last week. If you started over from scratch, like you're at zero right now, let's say you're a plumber or something, I don't know, and you are changing careers, what certification path would you choose? And I'm not saying like, oh, how what would get you to be a network engineer faster? And I want to know, from your vast knowledge of IT, what would be the most valuable path for you to make the most money the fastest?
Well, I wouldn't do CompTIA again, that's for sure.
Oh, hush.
But no, I would say CCNA is a good groundwork there. That definitely had a massive impact on my career. And it's still, and if I was brand new, I mean, it offers just enough breadcrumbs there where you go, hey, that Ansible thing in Donald's book was really good. I want to try that out. And then you go build from there. And it's a decent framework. I mean, CERT is not meant to be I know everything about this thing. It's a shorthand for saying, hey, this guy knows at least this much about these topics.
Yeah, and it's a great framework for someone who knows nothing about nothing. They don't even know what to study. It's a great framework for them to get started.
It's a good framework because what happens if you don't have a cert is, let's say you have your company only runs, I don't know, RIP, and you're perfectly happy with that company. Well, you're never going to learn anything other than RIP, and then when it's time for you to move on that company, you're going to be like, what's this OSPF? I don't get it. So
yeah.
So certs are meant to take you a bit out of your comfort zone and to force you to learn things there. Like I know VTP is a really hated topic, like Odin hates and whatnot. And but if it was up to them with their teaching it, they'd probably say like, "You're not learning that protocol." But the reality is, I mean, it's still used by 80% of businesses. It's and you. The fact that they force you to learn it, or DTP, no one uses DTP. Like
no.
No one uses DTP, but
that shouldn't be a thing anymore.
It shouldn't. But the thing is, you can encounter DTP, and if you're a CCNA, you go, "Oh, that's what that negotiated means. That's why this is happening."
Who did this?
Yeah. Rather than
I agree with you there.
There's witchcraft.
So CCNA, and then where would you go? Like, would you still become a network engineer at this point? I mean, because obviously you have a lean towards it because you love it. But as far as like value, money, opportunity, future-proofing yourself, where would you go after CCNA?
Well, I mean, the value is definitely there. I mean, I wrote 12 statements of work this week alone for business for various network projects. Like things aren't slowing down at all. And the thing about like college is as a result of them pushing everyone to cybersecurity because it looks cool, no one's really interested in doing it.
It does look cool.
Does it though? Hack the planet. But the problem is that they pushed everyone to this cool thing there, and that's its own little problem there because the industry isn't really hiring that much, and they don't really want juniors. But aside from that, no one's really learning the brick and mortar stuff there. So we're all desperate for like a proper CCNA or CCMP who can do it there. Like it's really hard for me to find seniors or whatnot who try and go for that when we do that kind of side of the bit, or when we add to the team, or at least think about adding to the team. And it's like it's definitely it's a cert that's not going to hurt you for one, and is probably going to help you. So I mean,
I love what you're saying here because when you look online, when you Google around, when you search, it doesn't seem like what you're saying is true, but you're on the front lines, and I know what you're saying is true because it's not been very long since I was actually in a similar role to you. So yeah, networking is still crazy valuable. It's still a crazy awesome thing to get into and make a lot of money in, and it's good to hear that. It's hard to find good people. It really is. So if you choose that path, go for it.
Yeah,
But
and whatever path, like they all want people. Like if you want system in, you'll probably be a bit more cranky, and you won't have as good of an alcoholic taste, but you'll
what?
you'll get a job. I mean, those people that have to work with backups there, so they go more for like the motor rail kind of drinks. Like they really need to get blackout drunk, but whatever field. I mean,
What
the
about
thing
cloud?
is,
Would you get on cloud? Would cloud be like the most viable choice for you? Because I think cloud is like, I think that's so hot right now, for lack of a
well,
better
I'm a
term.
big advocate for foundations, right? So
Oh yeah, we need that. So CCNA gets us there.
yeah,
Would
so
you say?
yeah, CCNA gets you at least on the path for foundations. It doesn't teach you everything you need, but it should at least teach you. Okay, I learned the CCNA and I can expand on it. Like, you say, hey, I want a DHCP server for my lab, and then next thing you know, you're building a Windows server, and then you're building a VM. So, in theory, it puts you on the path if you're that kind of person. And but I think the bigger thing is people got to realize that a lot of these careers are journeys, not just like I want to be a cloud guy right away. Like you can't. You're probably not going to go very far if you just write an Azure cert and you say like, okay, hire me as your Azure guy. They're going to be like,
Yeah.
okay. But if you work up to it and you do your network role and maybe do a systems role, so you get that side of it, and then by the time you're in the cloud position, there you're a lot stronger than a lot of the competition at that point because you can handle both sides of the cloud. You can handle parts of the migration, and you understand like, okay, well, it's just a virtual machine in the cloud. I already understand virtual machines because I know VMware, and it all kind of ties together.
Yeah, that's what I always tell people, and that's what's surprising is like when I first started studying cloud, I relied a lot on my history I've dealt with systems, I've dealt with VMs, I've dealt with networking, and that I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is. It might be called a different service up there, but it's the same thing. And if you come, I can't imagine coming to the cloud cold. Like, I just got my A plus, I'm gonna go learn AWS now. You're gonna have a hard time because you haven't worked with that
Which is
technology.
why it's funny the A plus has cloud topics.
Yeah, it is, and like the Cloud Plus, like no, yeah, it's interesting, and I think you should have a base understanding of like cloud, like operational versus expenditure. What is it? You should understand what it is, so you don't sound stupid when people ask you about it. But yeah, you have to. I think getting your CCNA, so you know the networking side when you get to the cloud. Getting some, I mean, gosh, Microsoft is kind of screwing up their certifications now, but yeah, getting some kind of solid Microsoft cert on the server side. I don't know. How do you feel about VMware certifications? Do you still think that's still valuable? I mean, obviously, if you go down a hardcore VMware path and you're like a VMware systems engineer, but do you think it's valuable as like a general person, or cause like
Yeah, well,
I never got
I
VMware
have
certified.
4 VMware certs. I have their standard data center virtualization. I have their NSX, their network virtualization,
And
and
this is all VCP, right?
yeah, and I have their cloud one, which is their automation. And I think I
I told
have,
you he has all the certs, guys. He's got all of them.
but anyway, my point is the biggest thing about VMware is there is a skill gap where you need to pay $5,000 for a training course, unless
You have your
you're a
CCNA.
CCNA. If you're a CCNA, you're eligible to write the network virtualization. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. You're going to have a hard time doing it. But if you can pass that network virtualization, which basically is your CCNA over again, but on the VMware perspective,
Mm-hmm.
then you're entitled to bypass that $5,000 course or whatever the asking price is these days. So that's another thing where CCNA pays for itself in unexpected ways.
That is true. Now, I want to get to this point, and I want to tie it into automation as well, because at what point is it valuable to get these, what seem like secondary skill sets? At what point is it valuable to get those secondary skill set certifications? I consider VMware, when you're a traditional networking guy or gal, I consider VMware being a secondary skill set. I picked up VMware without having to go down a certification path. I picked up a little bit of Python, a little bit of this without going down a certification path. At what point do you get certified in these secondary skills? I look at the DevNet Associate, and I'm like, okay, it's cool. It's giving people a framework to get started, but we already kind of had that before. And I did a quick job search for a DevNet associate, and guess how many jobs came up with it in like the U.S. I found one actually, one looking for DevNet associate. That's it though.
Yeah, well, I think DevNet program is a little bit misunderstood, and I think Cisco could probably do a better job at messaging what it is.
They should get a marketing guy on that.
Yeah, but the DevNet cert is actually a lot more senior than what people may realize because it's basic automation concept, sure, but you have to have experience with Cisco ACI, Cisco collaboration, Meraki, basically 8 different topic domains across several tracks there. If you're just a router guy there, you probably never touched Cisco UCS before or ACI or all these crazy acronyms I'm throwing at people. And so
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yeah, it's more for people who are more senior. Like I'd say, be around CCNP level before you consider DevNet associate properly. And not because of the technical skills of being a CCNP, but by the time you're a CCNP, you probably have exposure with more of the Cisco products in your companies and your day-to-day life.
Do you think the DevNet associate's a adequate test of someone knowing automation? Because that's the point of it, right? And I agree with you about the vast amount of knowledge you have to have going in. Like you have to know each automation thing for collaboration and wireless and security. Like that's a wide breadth of information. You have to come in having worked with that, and that's that's why I was able to pass it. Like I've worked a lot of stuff for years.
Yeah, I think we're both DevNet 500s, right?
We are DevNet 500. If you don't know what that is, guys, it's the first 500 folks to actually become DevNet certified, get that special badge. And I don't know what to do with it, but I have it. So
you just feel really special and smug. But I thought it was a pretty good test, actually. I was quite impressed with both the CCNA and the DevNet when I wrote them. I wrote them basically day one that they came out for Canada anyway. It was like day 3 in the rest of the world. But it was I was actually kind of worried. There was like, my DevNet associate there, and it's not open till Wednesday. But I made it. But I thought just to circle back, the CCNA I thought was a lot better because of the number of questions and the much more focused operational questions, very practical. And the DevNet was also very practical. It was, without getting too much into it there, it was basically a lot of, hey, here's this automation string, and what is wrong with it, or what is this doing? So I don't really see a way of passing that if you aren't familiar with reading REST API calls. And there was a fair amount of product knowledge, at least on my test, that you can't go the opposite way and say, hey, I know REST, I'm just going to cheat my way through this Cisco thing there. It actually makes sure you understand what Cisco collaboration is and how it works there. So I thought it was balanced on both fronts there. You can't cheese it if you're a Cisco guy, and you can't cheese it if you're a programming guy. You got to be both.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Now let's get back home here. Let's get back to the main subject and kind of I guess put an end cap on it. Cisco certifications, are they worth it? I want to believe they are.
X-Files, I want to believe.
Yes, and I do. Like I'm taking the ENCOR exam here soon, and because I believe it is valuable. And I want to tell you guys it's valuable. Mr. Packet Thrower here, he's in the field. I don't work in the field anymore, so I lean on people like him to tell me, hey, we're actually looking for CCNAs. We can't find enough good CCNAs. We need people who have CCMP. So I lean on people like him, and they're telling me, yeah, we need to find these people. So it's still valuable. It's still out there. And I think it will be for a while. Now, Mr. Packet Thrower, I want to ask you this. 10, 20 years, do you think it'd be more valuable to know about AWS or Cisco?
Well, I mean, knowing AWS doesn't exclude Cisco, you have a bunch of Cisco appliances in AWS right now.
Who actually uses those? No, I'm just kidding.
But you can do a lot of your direct interconnects and your VPC routing and whatnot with Cisco CSR routers or other vendors right now. So just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean the cloud is basically someone else's data center, but you still need to know the basics. And there's still going to be, I'm sure 10 years from now, we'll have a much fancier VPN, and SD-WAN will be like uh, archaic mumbo jumbo. There'll be like 10 years from now, it'll be like, why is that frame relay like SDN on that exam? But it's the way it goes there. IT is a treadmill, and as long as you stay on it, you're not going to get too lost. But if you have a nap by the tree, eventually you're going to be left behind or something. But I would say, in terms of, I think the new way, I think AWS or even a single cloud provider is reached probably its peak. Uh, I think because of costs and people realizing the reality of the cloud, multi-cloud is the new hot thing because
Oh yeah.
people want to be able to spin up different clouds, not just for redundancy, but you can actually do a bit of a stock market if you're more future forward. You can say, hey, you know what? Azure is 10 cents less per minute for this solution. So we're going to use Cisco Cloud Center, which is a cloud orchestrator. And we're just going to tell it to automatically provision or move our app over to Azure or Google Cloud or whatever's cheaper. And that's going to help with the workload optimization. So
So Azure or AWS?
I personally prefer Azure. I'd say I like Azure primarily. Google Cloud have the second most experience with, and AWS is kind of just there. The problem with AWS is, and not a lot of people realize this, but a lot of companies are barred from using Amazon because of Amazon is deemed as a competitor for a lot of markets. And
Oh, interesting.
so because of that, they're like, let's say Walmart won't allow AWS because AWS is their competition there, and they don't want to fund their competition there. So Azure wins by default, or Google Cloud.
Huh.
So and that happens a lot more than you might think, especially in Canada. But it's I think what you're going to find is, and there's also new clouds popping up, like DigitalOcean's out there. IBM just started a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Oracle started a cloud. If you wanted to have the fun of using Oracle in the cloud, but whatever. I think what's going to happen is cloud is going to become a commodity, just like storage, and like you don't really care what your hard drive is for the most part, unless you're really down into the weeds in architecture. And so basically, the money's gonna be in something like Cisco Cloud Center, where you build your Kubernetes solution or whatever it's going to be, and Cloud Center decides based on whatever requirements that I'm going to move here, 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 and off you go.
So you're saying this? I've not really looked into the solution. So you're saying this solution will, and it's Cisco based, it will analyze the cost of these different cloud providers and just shift your infrastructure from place to place depending on the value.
Yeah, I'm simplifying it a little bit here, but basically they have what they call the workload optimizer, and it will optimization manager, and CWAM, and it will basically look at both your physical infrastructure and also the cloud, and it will figure out what the cost is there, and if it decides that, hey, it's cheaper to run this physical, you can have it bring back from the cloud to your private cloud, which is your data center. And so there's a lot of really cool stuff there, and not just Cisco, other people do it too. But it's there's a lot of stuff there. So I think that the cloud is already getting to the point there where there's not a lot of feature differentiation. I can't talk.
It's okay, you're a tech guy. You don't have to talk.
Yeah. Not a lot of differences in the features anymore. Like before, like Google Cloud, for example, is the least featured cloud. Like it's more DevOps focused, so it doesn't have like a lot of functionality in the GUI kind of thing. But Eventually, like Google's going to get to the point there where it matches Azure, and then it's just going to be okay. Well, does Cisco have their appliance that you want to run in there? Okay, cool, and off you go. And if you don't, you can always export it and import it directly, right? So you have a lot of flexibility, and so I think the cloud is going to minimize. It's not going away for sure, but the branding of a cloud, just like how SDN abstracts what the network is in theory.
Yeah.
Uh, these new orchestrators are going to do that there. And then you also have other tools like ACI has ACI Anywhere, which extends ACI to the cloud. VMware NSX has a cloud version that extends to the cloud. You have like a Cisco security, like a Cisco Defense Orchestrator can manage your VPC security in AWS and Azure, and Google Cloud's coming. So it's becoming like Cisco and other vendors, if they're smart, are focusing on recognizing the complexity of all these random solutions, and they're trying to bring it into things like DNA Center or whatnot there. So you just pay for that, and then you don't really care what your underlay is. You just say, I want this fabric going on there, whether it's
That's smart. They're becoming the platform. They're the gateway for it. That's pretty cool. See, I guess the moral of the story here is that uh, learn the cloud in general, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, because you're going to end up probably interfacing with all three, or maybe more or others. So we're getting close to 8 o'clock my time, which means my wife's going to be saying, "Hey, it's time to come eat dinner." So let's go through a few super chats if you don't mind, and we'll look at a few questions here. Let me see. Let me get this guy in here. Jermaine, thank you for the super chat. It's kind of cut off there, so I'll read it out here. He says, this is a system versus process argument. You can teach anyone how to configure an interface, but he won't understand the system behind it. The new CCNA forces you to learn the system. So I guess that's kind of what we came to the conclusion on, right? Like that's the new CCNA. You can't film your way through.
Yeah, it's spread out enough there where you would have a very hard if you can brain dump I assume probably like a pool of like 800 questions to try and pass the CCNA. You can probably just pass the CCNA without going. By the time you memorize all those, there you might as well just read the book. But so I think it's going to breed more that regard there, and it because it actually tests everything there. There's not a lot of wasted topics there. Like you're not going to be like, okay, well, why did I learn BGP on the old CCNA? Because by the way, that was in the WAN topics, and that was 10%, and it was like one of 10 topics there. So you maybe had one question if you're lucky on BGP on the test, and it's like probably not pass or fail at that point.
All right, we got another question here from the Azure Demon. I just got my AZ900 and I am working towards my AZ103. I have no IT experience but work in healthcare. Any tips for getting a job or for the exam? So any exam tips or any job tips?
Well, I'm writing an Azure book on 103 and 104. So stay tuned.
What would you say for job? I mean, we kind of talked on that already. Like, they have their AZ900. They're working towards AZ103, which would be AZ104. As far as a job search and trying to land that first one, I mean, we both agree that it's going to be kind of hard to get that first cloud job unless you have experience and other technologies.
Like again, you have to think of it as a journey. Like you can't you have to climb the ladder or pay the dues or whatever expression you want to do. Like you can't. I mean, sure, it happens. I mean, you could find a Azure job tomorrow and it'd be like, okay, well, good for you. But for the most part, I mean, you're probably going to have to, work your way in for your help desk or tech support or a knock or something like that. And, after a year or two and you have the proper connections, and because the other side of working up the ladder is not so much the skills you learn, but you start making contacts there. Like you actually start talking with, say, the network team, and then if they like you and you take them out for a beer every now and then, they will, if they see they know you're applying, maybe they pluck your resume out of the hundreds of others and give you an interview, because the hiring manager always want to ask the team, hey, do you know anyone before you hire there, and if they say, "Oh yeah, I like Azure Demon because he seems like a cool dude," and uh, so on and so forth, or he's on our Discord or whatever, and sometimes that's all you need for getting your foot in the door. But the,
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's how like my brother did it. He was CCNA wireless guy, and he really wanted to work with cloud, so he got his AWS certification, and he worked his magic. He talked with the team, helped them out whenever they could. He became their networking contact with the networking team, and before he knew it, he was on the team. So yeah, working that angle is genius, and that's one of the main ways I can see that now. Because yeah, like you said, it's going to be hard to find just a cloud job cold. It's more one of those roles that you build up into based on previous experience. So let me see. We got some other chats coming up here. You send this one there. Alex Traz. On the topic of depth, is there an equivalent aptitude cert that says if you can learn that, you can cross-train anything? So CCNA worked often in my areas for that purpose. So I guess is there another certification area that's like the CCNA that can apply to multiple areas? I would say we just talked about Aruba. Aruba kind of does the same thing. Maybe doesn't
well, the
have
thing is
this.
about Aruba is their cert program is much more niche. I would say I like the Aruba cert and it's fine, but you basically have to be either working with an Aruba shop or be a partner or something to get those certs because it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to entry, and frankly, a CCNA will get you a Aruba job, but it's not guaranteed that a Aruba cert will get you a CCNA job or a Cisco job because if the hiring person doesn't know what a Aruba cert is, they may look into it, they may not, but they will know what a CCNA is.
That's true. That's true. Would you say are there any other certifications that are like that across the different vendors?
Uh, I'd say Juniper is maybe the biggest name, but even they are pretty niche. Like they're really mostly just service provider and carrier edge kind of things. Like you don't really see a lot of shops with Juniper gear that will care. Um, I can't really think of any really good ones.
And that's where Cisco's really killed it. I mean, they became with they did what CompTIA wants to be. They became the vendor neutral certification, but they're not vendor neutral, and it's kind of crazy.
well, yeah, well, I always have arguments on the CompTIA Discord about the how valuable vendor neutral really is because at the end of the day, it's like okay, that's nice, but if you don't teach how to actually learn something, you're always going to be lower than a vendor cert in my eyes.
Do you think like with multi-cloud, do you think a solid like what if they revamp the Cloud Plus to be like this beefy, huge like incorporating Google Cloud, Amazon, AWS, I mean Amazon and Azure? Of course, that'd be a huge exam, but if they had something like that, do you think it'd be valuable?
Honestly, I think it's a double-edged sword. Would it be valuable? Sure. But CompTIA's reputation is cast in stone at this point. Um, they,
Oh, they can change. Come on.
well, it's not, they can change all they want to there, but as long as people like me and whoever else looks at resumes there is like, CompTIA, like, you're, they're going to have a hard time there. The only way they're going to get ahead is if they make like a new track, like say they make Network Engineer Plus or something, or Cloud Engineer Plus, like something that's hey, it's a brand new track and it gets exposure there. But if they just update like the Network Plus or the Cloud Plus or any of the existing ones there, like they're already their reputation is what it is there. The people who like CompTIA is mostly the U.S. government, but they don't really care what the content is. They just want to see the cert, and the rest of the industry they prefer other pretty much anything to CompTIA for the most part. So it's they're gonna have a really hard time. I would say that if they tried to do it, they'd have to make a new track that may really make it obvious that hey, we're jumping into the big leagues. Look at us, or another vendor will have to step up and do it.
Yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying there. I like CompTIA for the fact that they're great for people just starting out. Like, and I forget that. Like, it's been a long time since I've been like the guy who's just like trying to learn everything. It's brand new. Like everything's really fresh. CompTIA is great for that initial learning point. But I
Well, my big
agree.
thing with them there is I'd be happy if they cut a lot of the bloat. Their exams are way too bloated for what they actually test on, and it makes it less interesting for the person studying. I've noticed from watching the CompTIA Discord for a couple months, and two, it's kind of a wasted effort there. If you're asking 50 questions or whatever they ask, and you have 200 topics that they're cramming into the exam, there, it just has like a lot of there's a lot of panic there. Like, oh, I don't know what an MDM is. It's like, okay, relax. It's a CCNA. They're not going to drill you on what an MDM is, probably, but it is on the exam, right? So it's so I'd like them to trim the fat, and I kind of take issue with the fact what CC or A plus is 2 exams for 1 cert. I think that's a little bit on the predatory side. Like they should, if they want to keep two.
Predatory. I remember doing that. It was rough. I hated doing that 2 exam.
I mean, if they want to do that, they should either make it 1 exam or they should make it so each half gives you a cert, like A plus hardware, A plus software, or something.
Okay, I could see that. I could see that. So being more job role based, maybe focusing on a smaller role, kind of like piecemealing it a little bit. That'd be kind of cool.
I think they need to just take us say like, okay, guys, we are the entry level vendor. That's what we are, and embrace it. I think they kind of looked around and said, no, we're just as good as anyone else, and they kind of elevated how they see themselves. Have you ever seen the CompTIA roadmap?
Yes.
It's kind of hilarious if you read it. So I think they need some humbleness, and they need to drag it down, but we don't need to drag them out too much. But I had to bash them a little bit.
I mean, no Cisco live stream would be complete without bashing CompTIA just a little bit. Anyways, we got a super chat from Ifyatu. He's always present in the live stream, so hey again. He says, if you're planning for CCNA, do you recommend the OCG, exam cram, and video series, and labs, like David Bombal? Is that all necessary, or is that like a bit overboard?
Oh, I know what I recommend. 1 second.
Here comes that shameless plug. It's coming out of nowhere. He's going to get his book that he helped write. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming to the screen. Here it is.
There we go. That's what you need.
Now, Todd Lamley's books, as far as CCNA, they are some of the best. So OCG and Todd Lamley are kind of right up there. Sometimes I prefer Todd Lamley. I'm just saying.
Yep. Odin's book is quite good. I will say he kind of missed the point on one of the topics, but otherwise it's quite good. I definitely hit a lot of the automation topics a lot harder than he did, and taking the test there, I think I was more right than he was based on some of the questions I got. So I'll just leave it there.
No, and I read both yours and Odom's stuff on automation, and I love Wendell Odom, and he did a great job, but I think yours was pretty dang good. I'll just leave it at that. You did a great job on yours.
Cool.
So we got another super chat from Heath Dotson. Thank you, Heath. Any tips for getting a job at an online help desk with no prior experience? He's currently studying for his CCNA. I guess I'll start with this one and let you kind of cap that off, Mr. Packet
Sure.
Thrower. I think online help desk, that's an interesting job. I don't know how many, like, I'm assuming it's one of those kind of like a thumbtack kind of situation where it's, I don't know, it's probably looking for A+ level stuff. If you're getting your CCNA, you advertise that stuff, that might be helpful, but they may be looking for that A+, just that entry level cert to get you in the door. I haven't had a ton of experience with these online help desks, so I'm not really sure. Have you seen those at all, Mr. Packet Thrower?
Yes, and though I suspect it's kind of changed given the whole landscape right now. But the unfortunate thing about being a junior is that your resume isn't all that different from everyone else's resume. You're basically, most junior people are no relevant work experience, maybe entry level cert or two, and maybe a degree. And so if you have no certs at all, you kind of go drift to the bottom, because basically what's going to happen is they typically sort resumes, and call centers, they interview a lot more than typical people, but they'll interview, let's say, 40 people, but there might be 1,000 people applying, especially if it's online, because now you don't have the benefit of local.
That's the point.
Now, I mean, theoretically speaking, I mean, people from other countries could apply if they really have no restrictions. And actually, a funny story is my buddy, he works at McAfee there, and he basically got the job because McAfee hired a guy and they're going to fly him down to San Jose, wherever their office is. And he basically said, well, why don't you just hire me and leave me in Canada, and then you can pay me good money for Canada, and that's poor money for you, and that way you can do that. And they're like, oh yeah, that's great. So they dropped the guy they're going to hire and they hired my buddy. But so the downside of having online and work from home kind of things there is it does make the landscape a little bit more difficult because you have a lot more competition. And I haven't encountered how this looks like yet, but traditionally, work from home was always a senior perk because you're more trusted and you could be
Yeah.
called upon to actually do the work. With this whole pandemic business, we kind of forced like the HR lady, I'll pick on her, who she basically browsed on Facebook all day at work there, and now she realizes, hey, I can play Doom if I want to, and so there's going to be a lot of balance there, and I suspect that's going to come into play with hiring a little bit because it's hard to hire a brand new face and say, okay, well, I want you to work, and by the way, I'm not going to be there to physically micromanage you or anything like that there. So until companies like call centers are pretty good at cracking the whip, so they probably already have ways to make sure you're on the phone all the time. When I was in call center 100 years ago, it was work time. So basically, they
Hmm.
measured the time in between phone calls. But so I think that there's probably going to be a give and take there for a while. But just keep persistent. I like to joke that's not like online dating where you just kind of say hi to everyone and hopefully you get a winky face back. But it's
Yeah, it's difficult. I'm with you there because like it's online, so you don't get that in person stuff. And sometimes the X factor you can bring to the table when you interview is that in person interaction. So online is hard. So I think to if you get to the interview phase, put your best foot forward. Make sure you got a good webcam. Make sure you got good audio. Dress for the part. You want to make it seem like you're the best candidate. Maybe you have a pretty good online presence. Maybe you got a blog. Maybe you got a YouTube channel. Maybe you got a GitHub. I don't know, but if it's going to be an online job, then make sure your online presence is solid. I think that would be super helpful. But yeah, it's a new landscape, so I don't even know really. I think that would help.
yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's an unfortunate numbers game. And the loser in that is always the junior. But I mean, eventually, it's kind of like playing the lottery, except for it's a bit more successful. Like it's, I mean, it might feel like you're applying for 1,000 jobs, and maybe you do have to apply for 1,000 jobs before you get one. But eventually, you should get one.
Yeah, and I see people say that all the time. Like they're so discouraged because they've applied for like their full time job is now like applying for jobs. That's part of the process. Like keep going. Eventually, you'll find a job that's like, oh, well, you're the perfect candidate. You're exactly who we're looking for. So don't be discouraged if you've just been applying like crazy. You'll eventually find one.
Now, the unfortunate side of it is from the business perspective. I mean, they have no reason to change because they have like 100 applicants show up whenever they open their doors. So it's from their perspective, they just pick there. I mean, you could argue that okay, well, I looked at 10 resumes and maybe the 13th resume was like the real rock star I never looked at, but it's a tragedy of life, I suppose.
Yeah. Yep. All right, we got a super chat from our good old friend Kelvin. He says, "Tell Donald meow sucks. He'll know who it is."
Well, the feeling is mutual, buddy.
That's some good old Discord banter. If you guys haven't joined my Discord, you should go do that because we have that type of fun all the time. You want to miss that? We got a
I
super
will
chat.
say my YouTube channel is far superior to Kelvin's in every way.
Oh yeah, you know what? I need to. I'm gonna go grab your YouTube channel link right now. I'm gonna throw up a super chat, and you can answer the question while I'm looking for it. Do
Sure.
you think CCMP collaboration track is worth it compared to other tracks? And
Uh,
go.
okay. Well, Chuck and I are both collab guys, or pretty sure Chuck is a collab guy.
Oh,
And
through and through.
Yeah. So he's got a phone behind him, so I felt pretty safe saying that. But old, an old phone. That's like a 7940 or something. But anyway, it ultimately depends on and any track and any cert really, not just Cisco, but you have to align it with what you're working with and sometimes where you want to go kind of thing there. So I will say if you have no collaboration experience, collaboration is very different than what you're used to with networking.
Mm-hmm.
Massively different. Like it's a different world, and uh, make sure you actually care about you find making a phone ringing interesting there because if you're giving up every weekend of your life there to study for the CCP collaboration to learn how to change the dial tone, you're probably going to hate your life. So make sure you're making smart choices. In terms of value, yes, I do a ton of collaboration work. I do a lot of Microsoft and Cisco, and I even did Azure, or not Azure, Amazon's contact center deployment the other day, and uh, it's a good skill set. Collaboration is really good for learning your foundations there because for one, it's a great way of learning multicast routing. Um, no
Oh
one
yeah,
ever,
multicast is that's where I first saw multicast is dealing with music on hold.
no one really understands multicast until they start playing with phones, really, because otherwise
Mm-hmm.
it's nebulous. Okay, this is really crazy and complicated, and why do I care? But when you're actually trying to make, say, voicemail work, it's like or paging, it's like, oh, I get it, that's fun. Um, and two, it really helps you nail down QoS and some other features like that. But it's a great skill to work towards if you're already working. But I would say if you're not working on phones already, or you that isn't in your horizon, I'd say play with it a lot more before you dive into it because it's not as cut and dry as oh, OSPF is fun, so I bet I'll love CCNP Enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, that's good advice because I know my first experience with phones was not just I want to become a CCNP or a CCNA voice. Then that was back when I started going down that track. It was that I was in a job where they just kind of said, "Here, I hate phones. You do phones," and it turned out I liked it. So yeah, get your hand on a phone. Maybe find a company that has Cisco phones, or go to Walmart or Target or something. They all use Cisco phones. They won't let you use them, but you can take a look at them. But they are. It's a crazy valuable skill. I mean, Cisco phones are everywhere, collaboration's everywhere, and not like Don said, not everyone likes it. So that's the recipe for a valuable skill, a skill that no one wants to do. And if you like it, then you're gonna have a great time. That was me. I got really far really fast because collaboration was a skill that people didn't like. I loved it.
And I'll just add to that one final point there is that vendors approach collaboration very differently. So if you're a CCP collaboration, you'll probably have a decent time learning Skype for Business, but you're going to have a hard time there because Microsoft handles things completely differently and than how Cisco does it, and they don't see eye to eye at all. So uh, if your company is basically, long story short, if your company is using, say, Microsoft Teams or whatever, then you're better off trying to learn Microsoft Teams than to try and dive into Cisco there and trying to hammer it there. It's not as applicable as like a CCNA is for other networking things.
Yeah, collaboration's very very wide and varied. I think the only like standard thing you can learn is SIP, and that's gonna be across the
And even
board.
SIP isn't. I mean, it's a standard, but everyone implements it differently. So it's
True. Hmm.
like Skype for Business. They only do TCP SIP. It's like okay, thanks guys.
Yeah, like you said, that's what's frustrating at collaboration, and yeah, I see that. So we got one more super chat. We'll answer, and then we'll have to end this because my wife has already texted me to stop. Mr. Caesar Morales says, "Getting a plus first to get basic knowledge? Question mark. Then a CCNA? Question mark. Could that work? Coming with zero experience." So we kind of covered a bit of this, but Mr. Packet Thrower, since you are here, I'll let you cover this. So A plus is that a good first cert? Then CCNA. What would you recommend for someone with zero experience?
Well, so I have nothing against the A plus, aside from it being two exams. I think that's predatory. Uh, yeah, I think it's bit too bloated. In terms of it, if you want to do an A plus, like if you truly know nothing, uh, like you, let's just say you can't build a computer on your own is the common shorthand for A plus, then yeah, sure. I mean, there's no harm at least reading the A plus books. In terms of A plus to CCNA, what A plus will mostly give you is just get you used to going into a test center or doing the actual exam process. So you don't want your CCNA necessarily to be your first exam because it's already a relatively hard exam, at least from a junior perspective, and you don't want to be your first experience. I mean, it's making it sound worse than it is, but if you want an easy win, then A plus is an easy win there, where you're probably not going to fail your A plus if you study decently, and it'll get you used to reading the book, and it won't really get you used to labbing because there's not a lot of labbing in A plus, but it at least gets you used to the idea. So
Yeah,
you
I,
feel
I
like
agree. I agree there. Sorry to interrupt you, but I agree. It's a good first search because yeah, if you go in no certification CCNA, that's going to be daunting and scary. And it might scare you off. So we don't want to do that. So yeah, baby steps with A plus. What's your opinion on like landing that first job? I think A plus is vital if you're trying to get that first help desk job. Now, if you already have help desk, forget the A plus. Now, what do you think about that?
well, I think I mentioned it earlier, but generally speaking, and there's never any universal truth with hiring, but generally speaking, job will just be happy that you have any cert there. So unless you're trying to work for like a PC, if you want to work for like a PC tech kind of PC repair, they have A plus. Like they won't care about anything else. But if you're trying to work for like a tech support at ISP or a help desk or something like that, there, if you have any kind of cert, they're usually perfectly happy with whatever you have. So if you don't feel like you have to get the A plus to get a tech support job, usually the A plus will land your resume just as high, if not a little bit higher, than with A plus or any other kind of CompTIA. So, I mean, there's always that business there that says like it's A plus or nothing kind of thing there, and just like there's always that one or two businesses say it says they need to have a bachelor's degree from Harvard or we're not going to look at you. But uh, in a reasonable sense, if you dive for whatever you choose, you can probably get in the door. The only thing I wouldn't really, I would advise caution with is the Security Plus. The Security Plus is good for US Gov, and that's about it. And that's probably not going to get you a help desk job or a tech support there because, like, okay, I understand some basic security concepts. That's great, but not really what we're looking for. So that's a bit too out of the wheelhouse. But like A plus, Net plus, if you want to do that, A CCNA, at least get you a phone call, and basically that's all a cert will do for you is get you a phone call, and then after that it's your interview and how well you know your knowledge and stuff.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Like, I think if A plus is crazy valuable if you don't have a degree. I think it's going to tell them that hey, you've actually gone through a study course. You've demonstrated that you can. I think what it does is it demonstrates you to learn something. It demonstrates you can stick with something, and I think that's valuable. I will disagree with you on the Security Plus, and I'm not going to say that the Security Plus will make you a cybersecurity expert, and that's what they're looking for. But I think it does satisfy some requirements, some DoD stuff. So it opens up
Well, I
some
did say
doors.
US Gov, or I meant to anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah. There you go. But I think Security Plus gives you a good overview of security stuff. By all means, it's not like a job, a
Well, I mean,
certification landing job.
I've used Security Plus as a and also cert. Like, like I'm A plus and also a Security Plus, or I'm a CCA and
Hmm.
also plus. Like,
Oh yeah, it's not a oh I have Security Plus, hire me. Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. It's one of those complimentary certifications that a lot of people just have to have. I know my father-in-law.
In the
He's been
CompTIA Discord, I see a lot of people who they just because they get cybersecurity in the head, they go straight for Sec Plus, and it's like, okay, that's great, but I mean, it's a very niche market that's going to directly see that Sec Plus and say, okay, I'll interview you there without anything else.
Yeah. So that's where it's valuable is getting those DoD requirements. But Security Plus isn't the only one that does that. I mean, CEH
Yeah,
does that.
Cisco's cyber ops associate meets that too, and
Have you
I
taken that yet?
I took the old version. Um, I'm probably going to do the professional when it comes out just for fun.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be brand new. I forgot about that.
But I quite like the cyber ops associate. It's basically checks all the boxes. It's not Cisco centric for the people who hate Cisco, and it's it's pretty all inclusive there. I mean, you could argue if it's just as good as like Sec Plus plus cyber security or whatever they call it.
Oh, the CYSA or whatever it is.
But, looking down on it, and like my girlfriend works in the security industry there, and they're all about the Cisco cyber ops cert right now, and
Oh
they
really?
don't figure it out CompTIA at all, at least from the teams that she's worked on.
Interesting. I might have to look at that thing. Yeah, I haven't really looked at the cyber ops path on Cisco stuff. I'll have to jump into that here soon. Well, anyways, guys, we're going to have to end this now because my wife is texting me. Mr. Packet Thrower, thank you so much for coming on once again. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And guys, if you want to find Mr. Packet Thrower on the interwebs, let me see if I have this. Yeah, I just posted his YouTube channel in the chat. Go subscribe to him. He's got 1,000 now. He's got 1,006 or 8 or so like that. So let's go subscribe to him. And he wrote a book with Todd Lamley. Go check that out. I'll put it in the description here when I have a moment. Any passing words of knowledge or wisdom, Mr. Packet Thrower?
Don't eat yellow snow.
You know what? That's probably the most valuable piece of information we've said on the stream. Thank you, sir. We'll take that down, write that down, take some notes. Well, guys, that's about it. Keep studying, keep focused. To kind of end cap this, Cisco certifications are valuable. I started this debate kind of lightheartedly saying, okay, if I had to go back and choose a path, maybe I wouldn't choose Cisco certifications, but I know right now I'm still getting them. I know they're still valuable. And if you're looking at getting into network engineering, yes, get them. They're some of the most valuable certifications in our industry and will be for a while. And yeah, that's it. So we'll catch you guys later, and we'll be live streaming next week as well, and look for videos throughout the week. Talk to you guys later. Let me make sure everything's golden here. Testing. Yeah, we should be good. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. That was fun. Oh, that's true. I was going to say, like, it doesn't matter. There's no way I can make you look bad. Yeah, that was really good. Well, anyways, I'll chat with you in Discord, but yeah, I gotta get my wife's sound on me. So, oh yeah, I forgot about that too. I don't want to keep you too long away from that. So yeah, get some mental preparedness. I know you'll pass, so let me know how it goes. Alright, talk to you soon. Oh yeah, if you can hear me, hey, what's going on? Cool, while you're still here, hit that notification bell. Make sure you get notifications. Go join my membership. I'm about to head out anyway.